The pod clung to the mothership's outer carapace like a tick on the hide of a slumbering beast. Beneath it, the black, semi-organic shell of the Zerkai vessel pulsated faintly, alive with internal rhythms, as if it breathed. Corbin Dace exhaled through his teeth, the last sound he would allow himself until the mission was over. Or he was. Inside the stolen Zerkai insertion capsule, every surface felt damp, veined with faintly glowing lines that trembled under his fingers. He resisted the urge to recoil. It wasn't nerves. It was instinct. The thing beneath him was not a ship. It was something older. Corbin tapped the neural trigger on his suit. The outer seals hissed open, and a wave of spore-thick air rushed in, heavy with rot and static electricity. The scent hit him like a warning, decay and wet metal, as if the ship feasted on corpses and remembered every meal. A membrane peeled back in front of him, revealing a narrow corridor lined with biomechanical tissue, glistening like the inside of a throat. He moved silently. His suit, woven from human and Zerkai tech, mimicked the ambient bioluminescence, bending light, warmth, and even heartbeat. It had taken Earth's best minds 7 years to grow it in labs hidden beneath the ruins of Sol. Corbin had worn it for 13 days, without removal. He'd learned to ignore the sensation of its pulse against his skin. The hallway undulated as if aware of his steps, and he adjusted his gait, sinking to the rhythm. Any disturbance might awaken the neural wards. Above all, he had to reach the central mind node undetected. That was the mission. Breach the ship, inject the viral AI, destroy its thinking heart. He didn't bother wondering what the virus would do once inside. No one truly knew. It had been constructed from fragmentary Zerkai code and human rage. It wasn't meant to be understood. It was meant to be feared. He descended into a chamber lit by phosphorescent sacs pulsing from the walls like malignant lanterns. In the center, suspended midair by strands of twitching filament, hung the human body, intact, eyes wide, unmoving. Female, adult, mid-30s. Limbs slightly twisted from long exposure to 0G. Corbin checked the retinal scan against the ghost image flickering across his visor. Private Leah Dace. He froze. His sister's body hovered in front of him.
No.
That wasn't possible. She'd vanished 5 years ago in the assault on Europa base. Officially declared MIA, presumed dead. He had assumed the worst, accepted it, weaponized it. Now the worst looked back at him with unblinking, frozen eyes. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. The suit locked him in place, recognizing sudden shifts in emotion. A failsafe. But it couldn't stop the tremor in his gut or the unspooling horror tightening his chest. Her mouth was slightly open, as if mid-sentence. Thin tubes entered her temples, her spine, her fingertips. Her skin shimmered faintly with embedded circuitry. Not dead. Preserved. The Zerkai didn't just kill. They harvested. Minds, memories, patterns of thought. They consumed cognition like data, embedded it into the ship's nervous system. Corbin stepped back. The chamber darkened in response. This was what he was here to destroy. Not just hardware. Not just systems. But the prison made of people. He moved on. Tunnels narrowed. Lights flickered. Every 100 meters, he marked a pulse node with nanite disruptors, harmless for now, timed for later detonation. The further in he went, the more distorted his internal compass became. Gravity fluctuated. Sound bled in strange ways. Echoes came late, and sometimes not at all. The ship whispered. Not in words. In symbols, pulses, faint suggestions carried in the ambient electromagnetic fields. His visor tried to interpret them but failed. The language wasn't meant for ears. It was meant for neurons. A message not to him, but to itself. Intruder. Unknown. Human. Fault. Isolation initiated. He was running out of time. Corbin reached the atrium leading to the mind node, a vast cathedral of flesh and light, its walls pulsating with thought. Veins thicker than trees fed into a swollen core that beat once every 8 seconds. Everything around him responded to that rhythm, including, he suspected, his own heartbeat. He crouched and pulled the injection device from the back of his suit. It resembled a syringe fused with a spinal drill, primed with the virus. He moved toward the core's lower stalk, where the density of signal was strongest. The walls shifted, perhaps in curiosity, perhaps in warning. Something unseen moved overhead. A shadow without form. He didn't look up. The core throbbed again. He placed the injector against the membrane. A voice whispered inside his skull. "Corbin." He recoiled. "You're here. We remember." The ship knew him. Not just his presence, his name, his past, his grief. It had scanned him, mapped him, dug through the folds of his memory like fingers rifling through an old drawer. "You are made of pain. That is useful to us." He didn't answer. He drove the injector in. The membrane screamed, not aloud, but within the very architecture of the ship. Lights flared. The walls convulsed. A psychic tremor rippled out in all directions, like a thunderclap echoing through multiple dimensions. He turned and ran, the virus spreading behind him, rewriting code and twisting the ship's neural lattice. The corridor warped underfoot, as if resisting his departure. In his ear, the virus spoke its first word. "Father." Corbin didn't stop. He'd reached the core. He'd delivered the poison. The tomb was opening. The freighter Val Trinaxis drifted through the Omarion belt, shielded by dust storms and old diplomatic encryption codes. Officially, it transported mining equipment to a neutral moon. Unofficially, it carried 20 metric tons of antimatter warheads, remnants of pre-Accord conflicts that were meant to be dismantled. But things that were meant to be rarely were. Ash stood alone on the bridge. The crew lay unconscious in the storage hold, sedated but alive. She had slipped aboard as a whisper of radiation, rewritten the freighter's environmental codes, and locked down its navigation systems before anyone noticed. The AI that once governed the ship now served her, reborn under a repurposed human construct she called Lazarus. It spoke sparingly, efficiently, its voice edged with synthetic calm. Navigation adjusted. Trajectory locked to Kale Station. 74 minutes until arrival. Ash nodded. She didn't waste words. Her gaze was fixed on a display mapping the station's internal layout. Kale was no ordinary depot. It was a classified Accord facility known for manufacturing psychological suppression tech, the kind once tested on early human captives during the Purge. She had found references buried in the Velix Mara's fractured logs, half erased by Accord scrubs. But half was enough. She began suiting up. Armor assembled from scavenged Accord alloys, reinforced with human-era nano-eve plating. Her weapons were hand-built, a pulse rifle calibrated to melt through personal shields and an electrospear made from a deconstructed stasis engine. She looked nothing like the woman who had once fought for Earth's defense under the Terran vanguard. She looked like its ghost. Lazarus interrupted her thoughts. Probability of Accord military response within 2 hours of station breach, 96%. "Then we finish in one," she said. When Val Trinaxis arrived, no docking clearance was requested. It rammed through the defense shield and embedded itself into Kale Station's outer hull like a spear. Inside, alarms wailed. Accord officers scattered like ants beneath a collapsing boot. She emerged from the breach in silence, her rifle sweeping the corridors with surgical calm. Automated defense turrets failed to recognize her biosignature. The Accord had expunged human data from their threat archives. In their arrogance, they had made her invisible. She moved without mercy. Security drones fell in sparks. Officers armed with neural lances never had the chance to scream. She wasn't killing indiscriminately, only those who had overseen the tech labs. She bypassed civilians, non-combatants, and those too young to know the weight of genocide. But she made sure every camera remained online. Every scream, every execution, every word she uttered was recorded and broadcasted across open Accord channels. "This is Ash of Soul. I am not your myth. I am your reminder." She reached the core lab in 18 minutes. The lead scientist, a tall, gelatinous Arvathian named Kelrek, huddled beneath a desk, tentacles quivering. She grabbed him by his translator node and yanked him upright. These machines, she said, pointing to rows of memory-leech chairs. You use them on human children. Kelrick stammered. We were told they were prisoners of war. The Accord had protocols. No protocols justify erasing someone's mind while they scream. She activated one of the chairs. Its blue glow flickered weakly. Kelrick whimpered. I'm not going to kill you, she said, stepping back. I want you to live with what I restore. She uploaded the raw footage from the lab's archives, stored in spite of Accord bans, labeled classified for educational use. Footage of broken minds, screaming faces, children taken apart one neuron at a time. She set it all free on the galactic web. Then she left. By the time the Accord fleet arrived, Kale's station was silent. No deaths beyond the labs. No structural damage aside from the docked freighter's remains. But the psychological toll was immediate and irreversible. The footage spread like wildfire. No encryption could stop it. It played in pirate bars, diplomatic briefings, and school halls. Accord Command tried to deny it. They failed. She struck again 2 weeks later, this time on Adrami's Prime, a political stronghold. No shots fired. Instead, she hacked the central monument's holosculpture and replaced its grand narrative with a human lullaby, one passed through generations before the extinction. It played on loop for 30 hours before anyone could override it. The galaxy began to change. Quietly, at first. Some called her a terrorist. Others called her justice. She became a legend, whispered in the upper tiers of Accord government as a strategic crisis, and worshipped on the slum worlds as a revenant of balance. What she didn't expect was a message. It arrived encoded through Lazarus, laced in an old human cipher so obscure only someone from her century would recognize it. If you're alive, then so are we. Coordinates attached. Come alone. Ash stared at the message. Her heart, conditioned for revenge, stuttered against the unfamiliar rhythm of hope. Lazarus flickered. Do you wish to engage? She closed her eyes. For the first time since her awakening, she hesitated. Then she whispered, plot the course. The coordinates led her to a place that shouldn't have existed, a dead moon in the Kaval expanse, long stripped by miners and declared uninhabitable by the Accord. Yet beneath the fractured surface was a facility hidden beneath layers of optical camouflage and deep space silence. As Ash approached, her sensors screamed false emptiness. Lazarus murmured, readings inconsistent with surface decay. Something breathes below. She landed her vessel and entered through a collapsed shaft, climbing down into darkness with only the hum of her rifle and the faint vibration of her own heartbeat to mark the silence. There were no traps, no guards. Only a single corridor of reinforced steel that pulsed faintly with the glow of ancient power cells, Terran make. The door at the end opened before she touched it. Inside stood 4 figures. Human. They were older, weathered by time and war, but unmistakably like her. One wore the cracked insignia of the Terran Vanguard. Another carried a plasma drill with the reverence of a weapon. A woman with cybernetic eyes stepped forward first. Ash, she said, voice brittle but calm. We didn't think you'd come. Ash said nothing, but something inside her fractured, something long frozen. Her fists unclenched. Her weapon lowered. Why now? She asked. The woman, who introduced herself as Kale, motioned to a large table displaying holographic projections of the galaxy. Because you did what we couldn't. You woke them up. The Accord made the galaxy forget what they did to us. But you made them remember. Ash's gaze flicked over the display. Uprisings on Accord worlds. Civil unrest. Accord forces retreating from outer systems. Whispers of neutrality from species once loyal to the regime. You were waiting, Ash said flatly. Hiding. We were surviving, Kale replied. To strike without a chance would have meant extinction. True extinction. You gave us a new equation. Ash didn't argue. She understood. But the fire that had driven her here, fueled by loneliness and rage, now had a new shape. Not vengeance. Momentum. Then we finish it, she said. They agreed. Over the next 3 weeks, the forgotten humans and their allies, remnants of scattered rebellions and secret defectors, struck with precision. Sabotage on a scale not seen since the first collapse. Signal beacons rewired. Communications corrupted. Whole fleets turned to rust from within. Ash became the name that silenced meetings and made generals flinch. No longer a rumor. No longer alone. The Accord retaliated, but their grip was brittle, their unity strained. Allies turned cold. Old crimes became undeniable. Ash broadcasted her own message, a compilation of memories, atrocities, resistance. It ended with one sentence. I am not your enemy. I am your consequence. Then came the reckoning. The Accord High Command, sensing their inevitable collapse, retreated to the Helix Bastion, a fortress station orbiting the dying star Trivan, said to be impenetrable. It had once been a seat of law, a place where genocides were ordered over wine and legal loopholes. Ash came for them. She didn't arrive with a fleet. She arrived alone. Aboard a stolen diplomatic cruiser, she bypassed perimeter scans using codes buried in Accord archives, walked through the gates wearing